Okay, hello everyone. Today is Wednesday, November the 1st.
Wow.
This year is just about over, everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we are continuing in our study of A Course in Miracles. We are in chapter 3, The Innocent Perception. We are in section 4, Error and the Ego. And we will be reviewing or just going over paragraph 2.
Okay.
So I can go ahead and get us started in prayer.
Okay.
So if we just settle back for a moment, relax ourselves, center yourselves in your secret closet, your sacred space, your altar that is within our minds and our bodies. Feel that alignment with creation, with source, knowing that we are the essence of source. And in this place, we are so united in one. Each and every individualized mind and body is full of the spirit of creation. And in this space, we know as we pursue this knowledge of what is error and what is the ego, we align ourselves in that innocent perception, knowing that all information, all grace, all beauty abounds in us. And we are so grateful for this knowledge. We are so grateful for this information. We are so thankful to be here together with one another, to be able to be an expression of heart and mind and soul and body. And we allow all of our entire being to be an expression of essence, of source, of creation, of God. And we are so thankful. And that is what we release at this moment. We release our total sense of expression of who we are and what we are, so that each and every individualized being will be actualized, understanding that each and every one of us is a part of creation. Each and every one of us, when we look at each other, when we look into ourselves, we understand that we are source, that we are essence, that we are God, and that we are Christ. And with that, we say, and so it is.
And so it is.
Okay, so Harriet, would you like to go ahead and read paragraph 2?
Hold on just a second. Oh. I realized I had forgotten something when
You need me to pause?
No, I'm with you.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, my glasses. I do need them.
It helps.
Okay, chapter 3, the innocent perception. Section 4, error and ego. Paragraph 2. Consciousness, The level of perception was the first split introduced into the mind after the separation, making the mind a perceiver rather than a creator. Consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego. The ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as who you are. I'm sorry, let me read that one again. The ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as you are. Yet, you can know yourself only as you are, because that is all you can be sure of. Everything else is open to question. Consciousness. And that's one of those words that because I like to review the section before we get started each week to see what words need to be looked at. And consciousness, according to Charles Fillmore, the sense of awareness of knowing, the knowledge or realization of any idea, object, or condition, the sum total of all ideas accumulated in and affecting man's present being. I'm going to read the rest of it because it's quite extensive, but I think that's enough for us to kind of get an idea of what he's talking about.
Okay.
And with the Course in Miracles glossary, the conscious part of the mind which perceives experiences, chooses, consciousness is the domain of the ego. Of course, we just read that. Consciousness can receive messages from the ego, which is buried in the unconscious, or from the Holy Spirit. So what I'm getting here is that consciousness, because the paragraph says, where does it say? Down a little bit further, it said, is the domain of the ego. But what I'm getting here is consciousness can be either the domain of the ego or the Holy Spirit. Am I misinterpreting that? As far as the definition is concerned, it says consciousness can receive messages from the ego, which is buried in the unconscious, or from the Holy Spirit.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot. I kind of agree with you that I think that that's where choice comes in, because it's where your consciousness lies. If you are only conscious of this, your egoistic self, that you get up in the morning, you go use the bathroom, you go to work, you come back home, you interact with other people, and you pay your bills, you do your taxes. Those are the things that I think that has to do with that level of perception, where you are only you kind of like stuck there is in that level of perception. But I think that if you are open to understanding that, yes, I am spirit, yes, I am, and I am of the essence. I am an aspect of essence itself. I am an aspect of self. I mean, of source. Then I will be more aware of Holy Spirit, and I will act as Holy Spirit, as opposed to only acting in self.
Mhm.
So I really think that choice has a lot to do with that. And because where is my choice? What am I choosing at the
Right,
moment?
right, right.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Because that first sentence is consciousness, the level of perception was the first split introduced into the mind after the separation, making the mind a perceiver. So, in other words, the mind is seeing and not creating.
Mhm.
And,
And I think
and
me
my
here.
understand,
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, my understanding is that, okay, the mind is a perceiver, but it is also the incubator, for lack of a better word,
That's a good word.
of whatever it is you want to create. Because anything that is manifest begins as a thought. And where do thoughts begin but in the mind?
Mhm. Mhm. And I think that, the thing that kind of catches me here is that consciousness, the level of perception was the first split introduced into the mind after the separation. So it seems like that was it indicates time,
Mhm.
um, and matter actually. Not only just time, but time and matter and space.
Mhm.
Because is introduced into the mind after the separation. So I think the separation, whenever that occurred in time,
Mhm.
and a couple of weeks ago we had a discussion about Adam and Eve, that kind of thing, that
Mhm.
allegory in from the Bible. In
Right.
Kabbalah, it talks about that there was first all, which is Ein Sof, AIN Sof, SOF, which
Mhm.
is that overarching idea of just ideation of idea,
Mhm.
and that first thought was like a contraction. But first, like when birth pains,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's that,
Oh, okay.
there's
That
that,
kind of contraction. Yeah.
yeah, uh-huh. There is a space for breath so that you can breathe in, but yet then the contraction begins right after the breath.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So um that there's that level of separation there where time kind of slips in.
Kind of, what did you say?
Time slips in.
Oh, slips in. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because there is, I mean, separation has to begin in time,
Mhm.
because there's only all, but separation becomes with the breath into the contraction.
Mhm. Mhm.
So making the mind, oh, making the mind a perceiver.
Rather than a creator.
Uh-huh. Right. It was my son. I'll get with him in a minute.
Huh?
Um, I'm just talking to myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Making the mind a perceiver rather than a creator. So now after now I am conscious of separation, because at first I wasn't conscious of separation because there was no separation. It was only all. And now that I am conscious or aware that there is something else, that there is something else here, and was introduced into the mind after the separation, making the mind a perceiver rather than a creator. So now I am perceiving, now I see logic.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to, and I have to figure logic out. And that's what I think, that whole allegory of that whole Adam and Eve story. That
Right.
second chapter of that second chapter of Genesis.
Genesis.
Yeah, because the
Yeah.
first chapter is just male and female.
Right.
The second chapter is, now you break down things. Now there's a breakdown. There's, God, there's Adam, there's sleep, there's Eve, so now there's a breakdown of things. So now there's consciousness and different levels of perception, of perceiving the information that is given to us. What are your thoughts, Forrest?
I'm just taking it all in. I'm just listening and learning. I'm just learning right now.
Thank you. Yeah, so consciousness, the level of perception, was the first split, because the level of perception, so now we're seeing levels of perception. Because at first there was no level of perception. It was just is. And now there's an awareness of what is. And if there's an awareness of what is, there's an awareness of what isn't.
There's always a flip side to everything.
So now we have that balance. And that's why, for me, and this is just for me, I have always seen that whole concept of the Garden of Eden is the brain itself, the organ, the brain. Because when you look at the brain looks like a tree. The left hemisphere is where there's all logic, where there's knowledge and understanding and things that are logical. The right hemisphere is all about creation,
yeah,
and being creative and flexibility. But the left side is, is that knowledge of good and evil. Okay, so this can be good and this can be bad here. And on the right side of the brain, because when you look at it, it looks like the tree. The brain, there's that there's the spinal column,
right, the trunk,
the trunk, and the ganglia that comes up from the into the brain. And then you have your brain itself that looks like, the different pathways, the different neurons,
the branches, the limbs,
like branches from a tree. So it looks
branches, limbs,
in itself, it looks like two separate trees in the middle.
Right.
So that's how I have
I never really thought about it that way. Or I never perceived it in that way. But I have to look at it again, see a picture of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at the mind in the level of consciousness, okay, yeah, now I'm understanding and would you just think about a brand new infant? The first day, the baby's just doing nothing.
Right.
You don't know
nothing but sleeping.
or so we think. Because that's the logic that we understand. But we don't know how much information that infant is
absorbing,
is aware of. Because they're hearing all the same sounds that it heard from 36 hours ago.
Exactly. And they say that infants and I think I did experience it, and the incident that stands out more in my mind is with my oldest son. But even in vitro, they absorb knowledge and understanding because and when I talk about personal experience, I never will forget. My cousin and I had gone. I think it was the day after Thanksgiving, after the parade and everything, went down to Macy's, and we were in Macy's and in the toy department. And when we were in the boys, where they had the little boy toys,
Uh-huh.
he was just as quiet as he could be. But as soon as I went into the area where it was nothing but girly things, he started moving. And this was like maybe about a month before he was born. And I said to my cousin, I said, "It's a boy."
Give me back to the boy toys.
That's right. It's a boy. Yeah. So I mean, and then they talk about how children absorb the rhythms of whatever it is the mother is experiencing. If she's listening to music, they absorb that, the rhythm of whatever, kind of music it is. And how the things that you think about, the things that can cause an emotional reaction, whether it be good or bad, they feel that, they understand that. And
Right.
this is even before I'm talking about when they're still in the womb.
Oh, you know
what?
What? I'm talking to myself.
Oh, okay.
Don't pay me any attention.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, continue, teacher. We're all students today. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that when we understand consciousness, because consciousness is that's one of the things that was a difficult thing for me to understand when I first got into metaphysics, because what does consciousness mean? And still to this day, there's, I understand it logically, yes, but do I have a fullness of understanding of consciousness? I would have to say I'm still expanding. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to understand and trying to know more about what consciousness is. And when it says that, and I think that I like this second line, the second
sentence.
Second, oh wait a minute, here's Richard. This second area where it says the level of perception. When I understand that consciousness is a level of perception, it's not all perception. But there are different levels of it. And it says it was the first split introduced into the mind after the separation. So at some point, I had to have seen myself as separated. Say this brand new baby comes out, it looks like it's sleeping to us, the parents or the adults in the room, but this infant is learning that, hey, I'm not where I was. I am separated from the place that I was. I was somewhere else, and now I am somewhere else. So that is our first sense of separation. Now,
now finish your sentence, and then I want to read the dictionary definition of consciousness.
Okay, cool.
Then there's so now time is introduced. So I'm introduced into I was here and now I'm somewhere else. So there is there's some space and time. So that's the level of consciousness that I am perceiving as a new infant, just gathering information into this new world.
Exactly. And to add on to that, anybody who has been around newborns or infants in their first, I would say 2 weeks, maybe month or so of life after birth, when you stare at them and you think they're sleeping, notice the different expressions that will come across their faces while they're sleeping. Are they dreaming? Are they being enlightened? What's going on? Because something's going on in that brain of theirs to cause, those different those reactions that we're seeing expressed on the face of that sleeping infant.
So what's the definition?
Okay.
Consciousness, please.
The noun, and this is from the Oxford Languages Dictionary, the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings, the awareness or perception of something by a person, the fact of awareness by the mind itself and the world. That's interesting.
Say that again.
The fact of awareness by the mind of itself and the world. Consciousness emerges from the operations of the brain, is the quote, the sentence that they have following that last definition that I gave.
Consciousness is the emergence of the brain.
Consciousness emerges from the operations of the brain.
Emerges from the operations of the brain.
In other words, maybe if it would make more sense if we insert instead of operations, activities.
Either one. Operation sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Richard, we're as you can see, we're just on sentence number 1, so you came in at the right time.
Hey, Richard.
Did you want to jump in or?
No, I'll catch you up. I'm catching up.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think that, going through, as it introduces the mind after the separation, making the mind a perceiver rather than a creator. So to me, that kind of, that introduces choice, because, my mind does not necessarily only have to be doesn't only have to be a perceiver. It might start off as that simply because going back to that infant, the new infant, now the infant has to perceive its surroundings. It has to perceive the space that is in the individuals. Okay, yeah, I recognize mama's voice. I recognize daddy's voice. Oh, that's the auntie that, used to talk to me sometimes. Oh yeah, that's the music we listen to. So now I'm in part, I'm part in perceiving where I am. And now, as say where I am now today as a 66-year-old woman, now I can be more of a creator because I don't only have to rely on my perception. I can more rely on the creative, adventure. That's the best word I can think of. I can more rely on my creative talents than only my creative mind, my right brain, more so than only what I perceive. I know that there is more than what I see, taste, feel, hear,
Smell.
yeah, feel, yeah.
Any
And
other
Mhm.
No, I was just gonna say, any other comments, Richard, Forrest?
I think when we're talking about perception and consciousness, I think it's always about choices that we make, even as a child or as an adult. But at any age, we're always continuously learning for the decision that we make, right or wrong. But I think sometimes things that we perceive may not always be right.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's just, you know, kind of incumbent in this whole process of learning. Um, because the thing that I think about with this is that, um, you know, the idea of choice and the limitations of, you know, the impact that our consciousness has on our perception of choice. So if you don't know anything other than what you're living in, then that's going to be what it is.
Mhm.
But it is that consciousness that helps it that consciousness and how it, you know, impacts our perception that makes us morph into perceiving stuff, which for me kind of reads as to always thinking about what's happening to us, what's happening around us, rather than us seeing ourselves as a creator.
Right. I
I think
agree.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah, I kind of missed that. Could you repeat that? I was looking at my son had texted me, so my attention was away for a second. Can you repeat that if you don't mind, Richard?
Sure. Let me try to see.
What did I say?
I mean, I think what I was suggesting was, you know, a couple of things. One is just as I was reading this, I was being mindful of the idea of choice and
Mm-hmm.
how the lack of consciousness also equates to our lack of choice,
Mm, mhm,
right? So that's one thing. And then the second thing for me was it's interesting to note, um, you know, what happens when we're in that state, because then we're always thinking of things outside of our control. Like there's something that's happening to us, or there's something that's happening over there, and we don't realize how much we create the
mm,
stories
mhm,
and the
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
explanations and our rationalizations and so on.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, number two. Consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego.
Mhm.
Um, I I hadn't thought of this before, but now that I'm seeing it, it makes a lot of sense because we create our personalities based on how we think and how we think of ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
what we're told about ourselves also. So consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego. So I think that, yeah, our egos definitely grow out of our conscious awareness of self. Anybody else's thoughts on
And for me, when
this
we talk
too?
about when we talk about ego, I think it's what we talk about self-talk. So I use me as a perfect example. So where I'm living at today is where God wants me to be today. But if God has something for me in my future, I set up to say I can tell myself I'm happy where I am at today, and this environment is where I need to be. I'm going to be happy exactly where I'm at today, moving forward to my future. But if I look at where I'm at, I can say, "Oh, how did I get here? Or why did I get here?" I think God puts me exactly where He wants me to be. But if I have a ego that says there's something better out for me, I can also say yes to my future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Harriet or Richard, your thoughts on second sentence?
Well, the first thing I did was looked up the word domain.
Mm-hmm.
And the first definition that they have here has more to do with government, politics, and all that other kind of stuff. But the second definition says a specified sphere of activity or knowledge.
Mm.
And I kind of and thinking about that, consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego, where the ego dwells. Or yeah, sphere of activity or knowledge. And what let me see if Charles Fillmore or because
What are you looking up?
domain,
Domain. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Wow.
And Harriet, can you also look up the definition of ego?
Okay. Domain. Okay. Fillmore doesn't have anything in his revealing word about domain. Let's see what ACIN has to say. They don't either. But
Are you looking up
and
anything?
yeah, I was ha.
What? You know how I hate dead air.
No, I was well, I should use my dictionary more, but when I go for things, I just kind of Google them.
Okay.
And when I Google them, I don't always get what I'm looking for. So let me check, see what the dictionary has to say. But ego, according to Freud, I think it's Freud, ego is the self. If I'm not mistaken. Am I anybody that's more enlightened than me? Am I somewhere close on that?
Is that in the dictionary or is that with Course in Miracles?
Neither. Oh, yeah. Let me see what Course in Miracles says about ego. Oh, they got a lot to say about it. Brute meaning the individual self, as distinct from other cells or the world. Ego is the Latin for I. And like I said, I mentioned Freud, and I think that's what I was thinking about. According to the Course in Miracles, the entire self you think you are, the I you, and they have the word I in quotation marks, you think you are. The self is false, was made by you, and is actually only a belief. The belief that you are a separate entity, a separate mind living within a separate body, that you have your own personal history and future, your own will. And basically what they're saying there is we need to get out of that mindset of I and think of ourselves as part of the universe is basically what they're getting, what the Course in Miracles is getting at there.
Okay, yes.
It's their explanation is quite lengthy, so that's why I'm not going into all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego. And going back to that first sentence, I think what they're getting at is the mind after they're talking about the separation, that whole idea of separation. And the ego is what causes that separation, really. Because if we think of ourselves as I and not a part of the universe or the universal mind, so to speak, then we are separating ourselves from.
You think the ego comes first? The ego causes the separation? I would think the separation causes the ego. So
Yeah, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
right?
I agree with you, Penelope. I've long thought that the separation is what it is that caused the ego. And so that's why, Forrest, I'm glad you asked to get a definition of ego, because in every single conversation I have about the ego, people are defining it differently. And they did historically. Freud, says one thing, and then, the Course will say something different. So, but Harry, you said the Course was defining it as the self.
The entire self you think you are.
Right, right.
The
So,
I you think you are.
right, which in some of the psychology circles that I run in, we take the ego and we think in terms of the healthy ego and the unhealthy ego.
Right.
So this one, what you're talking about, would be the unhealthy ego, the one that's defining the I. Okay.
So I like that because for me, I think my ego, but it's a positive ego. So for me, I know I'm totally connected to the universe and to what I'm doing and God's purpose for me to be here. But it first starts with me. So my ego has to say, I'm elevating myself, but I'm also elevating people, but also it starts with me first.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I feel you there.
Yeah. So consciousness is correctly identified as the domain. Yeah, I guess the domain to me is like realm, where it lives, the seat of the ego. So in order for the ego to exist, it has to exist somewhere. And it exists within the consciousness, because going back to that infant, where the infant is maybe when it's still in the mother, is there might be some consciousness, there might be some conscious awareness that, okay, I'm a baby and I'm living in here and this is where I live. And then as birth proceeds, now it's recognizing that there I am going to be separated from where I thought was this one level of consciousness to another level of consciousness. Now I'm not in here anymore. I'm somewhere else. Really somewhere else. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in here. And then I have to settle back down to get to this place where I am conscious of where I am. I got to grasp my surroundings, all of the pain and the blood and the screams and all of the noises and smells.
And that cold air.
all of the stuff that I'm really that I'm understanding, or not so much understanding, because I guess you understanding wouldn't get into that yet, but I'm experiencing. Now I'm experiencing all of these different things, and I have to categorize them at some point. So I'm categorizing them as different levels. And and those domains would precede me to be, okay, now now this is who I am, and now somebody's telling me I'm a girl, or somebody's telling me that I'm Black, and somebody's telling me that I live in Virginia, and somebody else is telling me that, you know, that these are my parents, and somebody else is telling me something else. Now I'm accepting these things as who I am, continuously creating the me that I am today.
Mhm.
And I think that would all be a part of my domain. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, as you were going through those different things that, you know, this baby is probably thinking who I am, I thought about something that Richard said a couple of sessions ago. And I think it was based on the question, who am I?
Right.
And Richard's answer, and I the more I think about it, the more I like it, and I'm going to use it too.
I am
I am
love.
love.
I'm
Exactly.
love.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't get any better than that, really.
Yeah, because that's just the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody want to read number 3? Do we want to move on, or are we still there,
Sure.
or what?
No, I'm ready to read.
Okay.
The ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as you are.
Ooh.
And that is pretty clear. I think we all agree that there's this ego that is it's causing us to misread or missee, who we are. That we project who we are on ourselves, even rather than seeing ourselves for who we really are. And to understand that as wrong-mindedness, I think is pretty. It makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, I can kind of jump in on there too. Is the ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as you are. And I think that's the thing that, kind of confuses the different levels. Because sometimes with some people, some things that, somebody will try to tell you that you're not smart, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're this, you're that. And deep down inside, you know that that is simply not true. You might not be strong enough. You might not be brave enough. You might not, have the articulation to to provide evidence for debate, but deep down inside that that is wrong. And I think that when we look, I think that that's part of the ego also, is because whoever's ego is trying to shift your perception into their insights, you still know the truth about yourself. And I think that, sometimes like the ego is a wrong-minded attempt, so your ego will try to the wrong ego, the wrong-minded ego, the unhealthy ego is that part where it will try to shift your perception of who you really are, so that you don't recognize yourself, and then you wish yourself to be, oh, I wish I was pretty, and when you know that you are,
But
or I
what's
wish
pretty?
that I was smart, and you know that you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
But if I can just jump in here,
Mhm.
I think what that is basically saying is we are too busy too often trying to either compare or compete with somebody else, another being, instead of looking at who we are, what we have, what we bring to the table, if you want to put it that way, and be true to ourselves as opposed to trying to be something that we're not. And that is where we really get into trouble. And we need to stop comparing ourselves or competing with somebody else. The only person we really should compete with is ourselves. Am I better today than I was yesterday? Yes.
Mhm.
Can I do this? Maybe not today, but tomorrow, yes. Kind of thing. Am I capable of this? Maybe not at the moment, but in time. And that should be who we see ourselves as, and not comparing ourselves to some other individual or person or hero or heroine that we look up to.
Mhm. What are your thoughts, Forrest?
Well, my thoughts are, I don't try to compare myself to anybody, but if here's a perfect example. So if I'm at a 5-star restaurant, I'm at that's I'm not comparing myself. I feel comfortable being there because that's part of who I am. And so I think even when I say how we look at ourselves, if I look at myself as rich, then I can be in a rich environment and feel exactly at home.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And I like it that, this is saying the ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as you are. Because that wrong mind, what's that, you say, Richard, the unhealthy ego,
Mm-hmm.
it is always where something is about you is just not right. You're not good enough at some level. And society teaches us that. It does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because everybody, society likes to classify and put everybody in little compartments and special little boxes and say that, this is what you're supposed to look like. But when we so it does make comparison. Society does. It makes comparisons. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to be strong enough to be your own individualized self. And I think that that's one of the things that um as we, not saying that, some people some people are really just great. They just have it as children. You can't tell me who I am. I already know who I am. I'm different from everybody else in the family. you know, they they do whatever they do, and I do whatever I do, and they're different from everybody else. And some people are,
Mm-hmm.
some people know it all their lives. Some
And
people,
they're comfortable with it,
and
and
they're
then some
comfortable
are
in
not.
it. And
And there are
some of us have to grow out of that to be able to see ourselves as we are, because to grow out of that sense of separation, because the world will put you into they will pound you into if you're a square peg, they will pound you into a round hole.
Mm-hmm.
They will say that, because you are a female, because you are this, because you are that, because you are something else, you don't fit here. And it takes a lot to be able to create something for yourself so that you fit in. And I think that everybody feels this. Even those who are, very independent minded, at some level, it's you have there's something about you that makes you feel the way that you feel, so that you have to buck society. Because if society is saying that, you can't, be, you can't be Black here, you can't be gay here, you can't be something, you can't be female here, you can't be this here. You're going to feel that for a minute, because they're not going to let you in. And you're going to feel that for a minute, but as you mature, or if you have enough grit, or you have enough standing, you say, no. Okay, you keep your thing. I'm going to do my thing over here. And before long, you're going to be wanting to get into my thing, because my thing is going to be filled up with other people like me. So I think that that's one of the things that, that where ego as a wrong-minded attempt will, it can either hurt you, it can either break you or make you.
Yes, definitely. I had to laugh as you were saying what you were just saying, Penelope, because I think about my youngest son. Growing up was 4 years difference between my two boys. And when Tommy felt like he wasn't being accepted, he would more or less give the finger to everybody. The heck with y'all. I ain't thinking about y'all. Y'all don't want me. I don't want to be part of it, kind of thing. He just had that attitude, and he would go off and find his own little niche and be just as happy. And like you said, very often when he would do that, others would come and join him in whatever it was he was doing,
Okay, let's see. Number 4. Harriet, you want to read number 4?
You can know yourself only as you are, because that is all you can be sure of. Wow. That to me is saying, when you face your truth, you don't have anything to worry about. When you are confident and face the truth of who you are, can't nobody bring you down.
Yet you can know yourself only as you are, because that is all you can be sure of. And when you think about it, we have been talking about this for several weeks now. We can only see out. We can't see in unless we look at a mirror. And I always remember, this thing that I saw about Sidney Poitier. I think it was a master class. And he had never, they just didn't have mirrors wherever he was in Barbados or wherever his country, Haiti, or wherever he came from. But anyway, he was saying that the way that he knew that he was an attractive man by the way that people looked at him, by the way that people smiled when they saw him. But he didn't have to see himself to know that he was attractive. And then when he said when he came over here to America, the first time he really saw himself was in a mirror at a grocery store or at some kind of department store or something. He saw himself. And that was the thing that made him think that he was different, because now he saw himself. Now he saw himself as different.
I think I remember seeing that.
Yeah, and he ended up, and anyway, it goes on how he ended up on the wrong side of town, that kind of thing. But it wasn't until he was presented with a mirror, a reflection of his physical ego self, that he saw himself as different. He didn't see himself as different when he was only looking out. And when we only look out, we can't see. The only way that we can recognize our love, our true beauty, our instincts, or anything about ourselves is how people reflect on who we are. So if I step in some dog caca, and I'm walking with somebody and they wrinkle their nose. Now I understand that, hey, look, I stepped in it. But if I walk and I'm walking past, I'm holding a rose and somebody walks up to me and they see me holding a rose, now now I'm understanding now I'm seeing myself as I am. And I think that this is one of the things that I can be sure of. I can be sure of who I am by how I present myself or how I express myself, and not by what is only on the outside. And this is me rambling, but I'm just gonna say this real quick.
It's okay.
One of the things that my mom always said is, don't trust first impressions, because people are always putting on their best. They're not, they're not always being truthful, so
Yeah, they're putting the best foot forward when they
yeah. And but we have
what
always
they
been
see is
told,
what they think is their best
yeah,
foot.
we have always been told that your first impression is your best impression.
No.
But so that to me was one of the great valuable lessons that I learned from my mother, is that just because you're smiling at me doesn't mean that you're a good person, and it doesn't mean that you think that I should think that you like me because you're smiling at me. But anyway, that's me. And so I digress.
It's okay.
Anybody else on number 4? Richard, did you say?
No, I hadn't yet, but my thoughts on this is, and it's hard to see 4 without seeing 5 because they're so connected. But and I had to go to 5 because one of the things that I was questioning about was, it was saying that you can know yourself only as you are because that's all you can be sure of. And I, 6 years ago, I was sure of who I was at that time, right? But I don't think, I think there's something to being sure of who you are and the truth that you have in the moment, that personal truth, but then that absolute truth of being a divine being, having an experience. That's the thing. Like I don't want to. I want to. I feel like I'm confusing myself. So,
No, you're good. Keep going. Keep going.
I do believe that you can only know yourself as you are because that's all you can be sure of. The thought that it brings up is that without consciousness, healthy consciousness, then you might not ever get to the point of being sure.
I think I think all too often we ignore that gut feeling, which is trying to tell us something, trying to push us in a certain direction, trying to guide us where we need to go. And we don't always pay attention to that gut feeling or that conscious, that insight that we are sometimes given. And I think that's where a lot of us might miss the mark when it comes to being honest with ourselves, looking at ourselves honestly and truthfully. Because I know with me, my gut will tell me one thing, but my logical mind will send me in a different direction. And what it boils down, when push comes to shove, as my mother used to say, it was, if I had paid attention to my gut, I wouldn't be in the trouble that I'm in right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I would say something about fear there. The role that fear has in terms of distorting our perception of reality, that wrong-mindedness. And so I think that's where my thought was, and I appreciate you saying that, and that it makes me go back to the whole point of what does it really truly mean to know yourself?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
how many times we make assumptions about the fact that we know ourselves when really that's just we know our ego.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing too is very often we are too busy trying to role play instead of being who we are, instead of letting our true selves, we're trying to um, be what whatever society or whoever's company we're in the presence of. And when I said role play, try to be who we think that person wants us to be instead of being who we are. And again, we get into trouble when we do things like that. Because if I'm playing the role of who I think you want me to be now, and then later on down, my true self comes out, and you're watching me from a distance, and then you come up to me and remind me of the impression that I made on you back when. So if you're always true and honest with yourself, you don't have those kind of things to worry about. You don't have to worry about, now what lie did I tell this one and how do I explain myself, kind of thing.
But for me, I think it's talking about fear. So I know years ago, I could walk into a basketball arena and thought, oh my God, people are looking at me. People are looking at me. And I had that fear. But then I could go and sing the national anthem to hundreds of people with not a problem. So I think it's sometimes the fear of what people thought of their perception of who I am as a gay man. And then for me, it took a while before I could understanding what transgender meant when I had some thoughts about, oh my gosh, transgender is not gay. So it took I think for me it was like understanding those people make their own choices just as I make my own choices. So why should I not be afraid of them or not love them or not be afraid anymore to go into any arena without any fear?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that has to do with time,
Mm-hmm.
because I am where I am at this moment. And as time, as you know, if I am relaxed enough to move on with time, then I can be I can be comfortable at my age. I know a lot of women who are 66 and and older who don't want to be 66 and old. They don't want to be called grandma, although you are a grandma. You are a grandmother. Whether somebody calls you Nana or Mima or anything else, you are a grandmother. And you can be comfortable with yourself as you are
Mhm.
if I don't have to, if I don't have to be committed to that I have to be a certain age to be comfortable with myself. And I think that this is what this is telling me. And to go move on to what number 5 is saying, everything else is open to question. I don't have to question myself by being 66 and saying that yes, I am a grandma. There's no question to that for me. Where I do have friends who will absolutely tell their grandchildren, don't call me grandma in the store. Right? you know, okay, that's them. And I guess, I don't know what type of confusion this is going on with the child, what kind of psyche or ego thing that this is causing them that they're going to have to put up with in their future. But that's just how that person operates. And if I'm calling that into question, it's not, for me, it's not my place. It's not my place to call into question why you don't want to be seen as a grandma where you got a grandbaby right here.
Mhm.
You know, this is your grandma. Your grandbaby is 7. Okay, you've been a grandma for a while now. You know, just
Right.
you know, if you don't want to appear to be a grandma, you still are. And you know, so I guess you know, and I think that that's all a part of ego. If you want to be seen, what is it? The ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be. So you wish to still be 20, just because, and you make yourself, you know, you dye your hair, you diet and exercise, you put on young-looking clothes, but you know, people know the difference between a 66-year-old and a 20-year-old. You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
good.
people might say you look good for your age, but they saying you look good for your age. Nobody's mistaken that you not, and nobody's mistaken you're not 20. But I think that and that is one of the things that everything else is open to question. That's what that kind of means to me.
Mhm.
Um, well, we have it's 6:19. Oh yeah. 3 is deep, so we shouldn't even try to get into 3.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
no, not even, don't even go there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm looking at
One
3.
thing,
Yeah.
one thing I can say is I had to laugh when you were saying, don't call me grandma, because I remember when my children were young, they were little, you know, and I had to hold their hand across the street. Everything was fine. But as they got older, I had the reason I had to laugh when you were saying about don't call me grandma. I would tell them, I said, don't you call me mama in the store. Because I am too young to have anything as old as you. Oh, man. Yeah, the games we play in our
But I
lives.
think that's our also our attempt to stay in our comfort zone, because we found ourselves comfortable at a certain age or at a certain time or at a certain level of life, and we don't want to move on from that. We're comfortable with that, and to move on, we have perceptions or preconceived notions of what this age looks like based on something from our past. And that thing might not even be real anymore. And we haven't analyzed it. We haven't gained insight in it to be able to articulate what it means to us today. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is 6:21, so I guess we can do a roundtable real quick. But so yeah, so any questions or comments or anything else on this second this second paragraph? This is a big one, actually.
Yeah, short but packing a punch.
Yeah. 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 Okay, so I can go first on a roundtable. One of the things that I got from today's session, and that is actually helping me, and something that I have been working with. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we did in a tarot session, we worked with the shadow side. So I'm still working in my shadow side. I'm finally up to pentacles. Today I am on the 8th pentacle number 8, and I am understanding where I am in my life, that yes, I have worked a lot, and now I am understanding that I can I still need to work forward, but it's okay for me to be comfortable with what I have gained in life, what I have gleaned, the things that I have the things that I have acquired in life. You know, it's important that I secure them, but also I can begin to detach myself from who that is. And this is this idea of of levels of perception. There's some things that, yes, I am throwing out because I no longer need in my life, but there's also some things that I am building in because now I am growing to be a different person. I am more conscious of who I am as an older female, and I am liberating myself, my spiritual self, from the physical self. So this was a really good class for me today. So I think that where I can move forward in this is just to pay more attention to less of who I want to be and more of who I am. Who's next?
I'll
Okay.
go. Oh, I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
Go, you go. After
All
you.
right. I was the thing that I had to quickly catch up on was the split in the first verse,
Mm-hmm.
and it just dawned on me. It's like the split from who we really are. Our split from the truth. And so then all of the sorts of things that happen off of that and the role that the ego has. And I think the confirmation more so than anything else is, that our mind goes into a perceiver, or what I might call a projector mode rather than a creator. I learned this time that the ego is actually that consciousness is the house of ego. That was new for me today. But lastly, I think it just all comes back to this whole idea of, the role that the ego has in, creating fear, creating doubt. And the last verse, I think, says it all, is that everything else is, when you're not in that space, everything else is open up to question. And so when there are questions and you still, when you still have questions, or there's questions around that, that could be a symptom of, the ego, taking a toll on you.
Thank you. Forrest?
So what I've learned about with ego today is this: it's positive and negative ego. So what I can apply to my life today is I'm very happy where I'm at today, but I do look for a better future in the future, that I can also be a vessel to help other people. So as long as God has elevated me to be a better person, that's my future that I look forward to.
Thank you. And you, Miss Harriet?
I think the important thing for me today is that I got out of today's session is I need to be conscious at all times of my truth and being able to deal with it. Sometimes it may not be what and when I say I mean the small little I, that ego is trying to push me towards. And I just need to be conscious that I am a part of the whole, this universe. Every person that I see, no matter how I feel about them, they are my brother or my sister, and I need to love them unconditionally. There are some that I would love at a distance, but I'm not going to put a wall between me and them. I'm going to set limits as to what they can and cannot do with me, or say to me, or how they treat me. Because there are certain things that I will and will not accept. But at the same time, I'm still going to love them unconditionally. And in whatever way I can, teach them the same kind of love that I'm feeling for them. In other words, unconditional love.
Mm.
And I need to put the ego behind me.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well then this is a really good session today. I think that we learned a lot. Okay, so
Yes, we did.
let's see. Tomorrow what's tomorrow? Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
Tomorrow we have I Am Correct, Forrest, in the
Yes,
morning. Okay, from
yes.
11 to 11:30. We have I Am from 7 to 8:30. Tomorrow we have the reading of the book Flight. So exciting. Let's see. This Saturday is the first Saturday. I think it's what is the fourth?
The Gospel of Thomas,
The
yeah.
Gospel of
The fourth.
Thomas. That's from 2 to 4. And on Sunday, we will talk about go to our writing. We used to do it used to be journaling, and it still can be. So if you want to, talk about your journaling experiences or what's going on with your journaling, if you want to talk about how you're writing a cookbook, or if you want to talk about, if you want to do some character development in your novel or short story that you're working on. So this is our writer's session. So this is one of the things that we're going to be doing on Sunday, is all things related to writing. One of the things, and the following Sunday on the 12th, we will be coming here to my home where we're going to be working on tarot spreads. So bring your tarot cards, get ready to do readings, practice doing readings, not only for yourself, but for others, because we're going to be working with our intuition. We're going to be practicing doing tarot spreads, and we're going to kind of break off into small groups and work on our how we lay out our spreads and how we do readings for one another. Also, one of the things that I'm interested in, and just to let y'all know, I'm going to be calling on everybody here because February, I think I want to say it's the 24th. I don't have the direct date, but that will be 8 years for us in Inner Haven. So thinking of doing an expo, or a little mini expo. So if anyone has any ideas, if you want to set up a booth, if you want to be a presenter, that would be great. I'm looking for presenters, and I'm looking for people who are willing to do booths. So just let me know what you would like to do, and I'm working together right now to get us a venue, and we'll see how it goes. So that's it for today's session. Any questions or comments?
Everything was wonderful tonight. Thank you.
Wow, it was really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Would anyone like to close us out in prayer?
I can.
Okay, I'm going to say it's time for us to start hearing some deep voices now.
I know.
So you can go ahead, Harriet.
No, if one of the guys wants
Speak
to.
low tone. Go for it, Harriet.
Okay, let us take in a full, deep, cleansing breath. And as we take in that breath, see ourselves sitting in a white bubble of love and protection, keeping us safe wherever we go and with whatever we do. And as we exhale, we let go of all of the stresses of the day. And remember that as we exhale, we're also breathing out carbon dioxide for the plants that give us the oxygen. And as we leave this session, let us leave with an attitude of gratitude for this time that we've spent together, for this time that we have learned from each other, taking those lessons, making us better and better with each passing day. See today as better than yesterday, and know that we will be better even better tomorrow. And let us pray for peace for those people living in the Middle East that are going through so much turmoil and trouble now.
Get over it.
Bring them peace. Bring them and remove from the consciousness of anyone who might have some kind of mistrust or hatred of another person because of their religious affiliations, the color of their skin, or anything that makes someone, quote unquote, different. Learn to love and love unconditionally, because we are all created by the same power, the same source, the same God, the same Allah. And with that, I say, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you.
So it is. Thank
So
you,
it
thank
is.
you.
All right then, everybody, love you.
Love
you
All right,
y'all.
love you too.
All right,
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.